we do have a high-profile case. It's the case of Holly Greig. I'm sure everybody here is fully aware of it, but maybe some in the crowd are not. So can I call upon Robert Green to come and talk about that? Thank you, Robert. And thank goodness we have heroes in our nation, and this is one. Okay? They still exist.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Belinda. And I'd just like to, I don't know about hero, I'm not a hero. I just heard about this terrible, terrible story, and I've just decided I would do my very best to try and put things right if I possibly could. But I can't do it by myself. I need a great deal of support, and I've had some wonderful support from brave people all over Britain and abroad, including Belinda and many others. Just before I start, I think I should like to thank another very brave lady who was responsible for sort of stimulating this event in the first place. Her name is Emma Clark, and I'd like to give, if you could give her a round of applause, because without her initiative, we wouldn't be here today. So thank you very much, Emma. Now, for those of you who don't know about the Holly Greig story, I'll just explain very, very briefly, because I know other speakers will want to come up, and I don't want to take too much time that might be devoted to other matters, even though this is a very important case, and we hope this might be the very case that will actually expose all the terrible things that are going on in our country. Now, Holly Greig is now 30 years old, but 10 years ago, when she was 20, she's got Down syndrome, I have to say, but she is not incapax. She's quite an intelligent person. She's a reliable witness and a very honest witness. And she told her mother that from the age of 6, she had been sexually abused by her father, followed by her elder brother. This was then reported to Grampian Police. This took place in Aberdeen in Scotland. And the father was interviewed, but nothing happened. A few months later, Holly started to tell her mother about other things, other members of the gang. And what she told her mother was that her father had been sharing her with a gang of paedophiles in Aberdeen, including a sheriff, a senior police officer, social workers, a bank manager, a head teacher, and a lot of other professionals. Now, they went to the police station and gave all those names out, identified every single one of them. Nothing was done, apart from 11 days later, Holly's mother, Anne, was actually taken from her home by a group of social workers and medical officers and thrown into a mental institution. She had never had a thing wrong with her, but they wanted to shut her up because of all the people who are going to be implicated in this terrible case that I have to tell you goes right to the Scottish government at this present time. The person who actually was responsible for preventing this, and we didn't know this at the time, was the prosecutor in Aberdeen, or Procurator Fiscal as she's known, a woman called Elise Angelini. Now, Mrs. Angelini, we have a sort of story that broke yesterday, and we're very grateful for that, is now the leader, the Lord Advocate, who is the leader of all criminal law, the main person in criminal law for the whole of Scotland. And she, again, the second time around, when we brought more evidence before, tried to hush it up. We have documentary evidence that she, Elise Angelini, stopped the first case and has lied about her involvement in it, which is featured. You'll actually be able to get copies of the article on the stall just over to my right. But she actually prevented the case twice running and has lied about it. The main reason for her lying, I think, was because of a close association with the sheriff. And that is a matter of fact. And since that time, we've been trying to get the case into the public domain. The police didn't investigate the first time. They didn't investigate the second time when we brought all this to attention in 2009. There is a racket going on. It involves very senior people in Scotland. The First Minister of Scotland knows all about it, Alex Salmond, and has known about it for years. The Justice Minister, Kenny MacAskill, has known all about it, and they do absolutely nothing about it. Now, one of the key factors when I was trying to bring the story to the public's attention, and I only got into this about 18 months ago, was that the media were actually being warned off by the Crown Office, which is run by Mrs. Angelini. So I was anxious to find out who it was who was actually trying to stop all this. And by with some of my loyal people who are giving me information. There's some wonderful people up in Scotland there who are loyal and brave and doing some marvellous things, I have to say, behind the scenes, because Scotland is not a very easy place to live in if you're opposed to paedophilia, I can tell you. But they discovered that the Alicia Angelini had not been using her own lawyers, as you would expect her to do. The inspector instead had been using a private firm called Levy and McRae, one of the most eminent firms in Scotland, certainly most powerful ones. And the person who was responsible for this, for mounting these attacks on the media, was their senior partner and head of litigation, a man called Peter Watson. Now, many of you here will never have heard of Peter Watson, but I was reliably informed that he is in fact the most powerful man in Scotland, even more powerful than the First Minister, Mr. Alex Salmond. Now that's quite remarkable in a way, and I have to say Mr. Watson is a remarkable man in one respect, because no one's ever voted for him, and until very recently, virtually nobody in Scotland had ever heard of him. Because of his grip on the media, he represented nearly all the major newspapers in Scotland, he represents Scottish television, and he was able, through those means, to actually silence everyone about this terrible, terrible case that has never, ever been properly investigated. Now, when I heard about this, I challenged Watson, and I said, first, are you responsible for the attacks on the media, the threats towards the media, both in Scotland and outside? And secondly, if you are, who is paying your fees? Is it Mrs. Angelini personally, who you purport to represent, or is it the Scottish taxpayer? Well, Mr. Watson didn't answer any of the questions, first of all, but as it happens, again through a loyal supporter, I had a document in front of me dated the 4th of December from Mr. Watson and Levy and McRae, threatening one of the most famous international organisations in the world to shut them up. I'm not going to mention the name, but it wouldn't be too hard to guess. And so I confronted Watson with this and said, no, I've got you here. I know you're acting on this case. So he had to concede that, but again, failed to reveal who was paying his fees. Now, we're talking about people who've been heroic in this case. There are many of them. We are looking for people in the media to come forward, but already some brave, very brave people have come forward. Certainly here in England, we've got Mr. Brian Gerrish, who's been following this story and other stories of abuse, including stories like Cheryl Stannard, who is here today, Maureen Spallock. Check on all those things. He's followed all of those things. We have Dave Darby over in Ireland, and especially at this present time, the man who deserves great accolades is a man called Stephen Rayburn, who is the editor of The Drum, who was the first person in Scotland who would actually take this case on. And he was threatened, and his firm were threatened to be, by Peter Watson, to be put out of business if they ever mentioned Angelini's connection with this case. And don't forget, we had documentary evidence to say that she had been lying to the people of Scotland about this terrible, terrible cover-up. Anyway, they very bravely persisted in this. They brought up another story in April through the sister magazine, The Drum. There's the firm and The Drum work closely together. And as a result of that, Watson and Levy and McRae then challenged through the Press Complaints Commission to try and silence them once again. Well, last week they lost. That is, Levy and McRae and Watson lost. And as a result of that, now a lot of things can be revealed that were not revealed fully. Mrs. Angelini, we do not know who has paid her fees, but I'm reliably told that it is the Scottish taxpayer. And this is an absolute disgrace. This person has effectively prevented, since 2000, the investigation into a mass rape gang, and it isn't just Holly. There are 7 other known victims of the rapes, and as a result of that, all those poor children have suffered for many, many years because of the failure of the person who holds the highest office in Scotland in the legal situation. She's a person who I think should be dismissed immediately, and also should be charged for perverting the course of justice as well. She is a really despicable person, and her present position there as Lord Advocate is an outrage and an insult to all the wonderful people in Scotland. It really is. So let us hope that something is done about it as a result of something going on today. But great bravery from Stephen Rayburn, and of course from the other gentlemen, Brian and Dave over in Ireland as well, with Sovereign Independent.